Mike used to train the same gym as we did. And I just thought to myself, if I could just do one day of pads with Mike, it would fulfill one of my dreams, you know?
This is Charlie Parsons for the Purist Boxing and Fight Hype. Today I'm doing an interview with a legend of all combat sports, the most credible and the most well-known cutman in the game, Mr. Stitch Duran. Do you like that intro? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Nice intro. Thank you for the intro. Huh? I'm doing good, though. Sunny Las Vegas, can't beat it. So I'm healthy, so I'm doing good.
I've got to say, I'm a little bit jealous. It's we're into mid-March now, and in the UK, we just got rain and cold weather.
Yeah, I think all the times I've been to the UK, I think the last time I was in London was the first time I saw sun. I didn't know you guys had that, but obviously you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I understand.
Just quickly before we get into sort of the nitty-gritty of it all, COVID, where you are, I mean, in the UK, we're sort of finally coming out of a third lockdown. They're saying that, we might be going into another one. It's all uncertain. How's things where you are?
Yeah, it's about the same. Actually, yesterday was the first time I've been to a gym. I was at the Floyd Mayweather gym, wrapping the hands up with this young rapper that Floyd Sr. wanted to train, but it's the first time I've been out. But here in Las Vegas now, everything's like at 50%. It just started this week. It was at 35%, so it'll be at 50% until I think May 1, and then they'll make adjustments. But yeah, everybody's being careful. It's a worldwide thing, so we all have to do our part in trying to control this virus and eventually take a hold of it. So, we're doing the best. I've been home and did some fights for Top Rank in a bubble here at the MGM. Which was nice. So it got me out of the house and got me into the bubble, which we called the boxing version of Shawshank Redemption, because it was basically like a prison, but got to hang out with the guys. So that was fun.
See, I speak to a few people. Well, obviously I'm working the industry, so I'm speaking to people in the bubbles over here. They seem lively over here. What are the bubbles like over in the US? Is it like you say, it is like prison?
Yeah, pretty much so. It's fun, just to go and hang out with the guys. And but normally, like I said, these are the Top Rank fights, and I've done, I think, 26 shows with them. But you go and you check into the hotel at the MGM, and you go up to the 12th floor, which is exclusive just for the participants. And you take your COVID test, you go in your room, and you're on lockdown till the following day when you get cleared. And the only time you can walk out of your room is to go eat, go to the press conference, go to the weigh-ins, go to the fight, and that's it, But, under these conditions, Charlie, we really can't complain too much. I had a job opportunity, still had some work that I could do. So I accept that, but it looks like April, I'm off this month in March, but April we start all over again.
I think that's one thing that I sort of like envy a little bit, because going to shows is cool, but the lack of media that there has been at events, especially over here at least, there hasn't been any opportunity apart from, your IFLs to get out to shows. And that's one thing that everyone says this bubble environment is weird, it's eerie. But it's one thing that as a fan, I would have just loved to experience once. And obviously I don't think we're going to see many more bubbles going forward. So it's one thing that I am a little bit gutted that I didn't get to sort of experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. And even, us as participants, it's nice to get stopped by the fans after the fight on the way to your car and, take pictures and shoot the shit with them and give back to the fans, and to have the fans cheer, with the excitement of the fight and all that. So these are all moments that, it's nice when we get back to being normal.
Of course. Now, I've got to ask you about a fight that happened last night. Did you watch CHOCLATITO ESTRADA last night?
I did. Yeah, what a fight, man. You got to give respect to both of them, and those kind of fights where you wish you had a draw. But there was legacies that were established, and there was legacies there that kind of took a hit. So, but that's the nature of the game. and even Cecilia Brackus and Jessica McCaskill, you know, they asked me to, I'd worked with Jessica McCaskill before. Actually, I worked with Cecilia Brackus also, but they called me to work with Jessica, and I just couldn't because I wasn't ready to travel out of my home into, especially now that, you know, they have audience. But now that I have my second COVID shot, I'm a lot more comfortable going out to public. So it's like a movie, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Shit, you just don't know who has it and who doesn't, you know.
Yeah.
So
you got to exactly.
Yeah.
Now this last night, something you're going to have to educate me on a little bit, because I believe the ring walk UK time was about 5:30 a.m. I got to round 9 of McCaskill and Breckhouse, and that is the last thing I remember. And I woke up about midday today, and I thought, oh no, I've missed it. So the minute we get off this interview, I'm actually going to catch up with Chocolatito Estrada. But a lot of people were saying that they thought Chocolatito won it. They won 17, 111, one of the cards to Estrada. Ludicrous. Your view on that?
Yeah, you know, I've done shows in Texas before, and they're quite unpredictable, to be honest with you, you know. And there was one time I just kind of jumped on a judge, and I never do, because you know, it just things they're, you know, and it's important. I always say, you know, Charlie, in combat sports, you know, this is the only sport where we don't have to be certified to be called professionals in what we do, and that includes the judges, you know. So, and then everything is subjective. So, you know, you're always going to get those kind of calls, and you just kind of, you know, bow your head and say, gee, you know, it's too bad for the guy that lost.
I think, unfortunately, last night there were a few sort of eyebrows raised. I mean, obviously I got all the way up until co-main event, and I know that in Raymond Ford's fight, one of the cards everyone was raising eyebrows at. In the McCaskill fight, people were saying, you know, it was a closer fight. It shouldn't have been as wide as it was, and then in the main event. So, but the thing is, it's a worldwide problem, isn't it? Really, I mean, we're having decisions over here where, you know, Twitter's in outrage, everything's in outrage. I mean, what can be done?
Nothing. I mean, it's just, you know, the thing about it is every judge looks at every fight differently to some points, you know. The key word that they use is everything is subjective.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the whole key word. And, you know, and in all fairness, I think judges try to be fair in their own line. Yeah. And, but it's just, you know, some are better than others.
Now,
you know, let me get back. Years ago, I did a couple kickboxing shows where I was actually a judge, and I didn't like it. You know,
you like it?
So, no, I didn't like it. I got to see, because one of the guys I knew, and you know, and I knew I shouldn't be partial, but yeah, there's that little ounce of thing that say, damn, I do know him, you know, and so those do come into play. I know, because I experienced that myself, and that's why I said I couldn't be a judge.
It's a bit like when you're scoring a fight yourself. There's always someone. Well, I mean, unless you know both really well or whatever. For me, when watching it, there's always someone that I prefer. For example, you know what? I think a really good example of it is Derevyanchenko against Charlo when they fought. Right, mm-hmm. Charlo. Most people had it sort of 2, 3, 4 rounds to Charlo. I'm a big Derevyanchenko fan. Right, I thought I think I scored it a draw, which was. It was a close fight, but I don't think it was a draw kind of thing, looking back on it. And it is one of those things where if you've got a bit of a soft spot, it is so hard to tell, because you're giving rounds where, you know, if they're a close round, but say Charlo won it, I'll be like, oh, I'll give that to Derevyanchenko kind of thing.
Yeah, I've been through that process, so I understand. And that's why I say
it's one of those things. I don't think I could be a judge myself.
Yeah.
Now, I was doing my research, and I was looking at sort of skipping through it, an RT MMA interview. And something I wanted to get your opinion on is YouTube boxing and exhibition boxing. However, first, before we do jump into that, around that sort of point in the interview, I heard about sort of 2 weeks on the pads with Mike Tyson. Can you just sort of tell me that experience? Because, you know, what to hear it firsthand on Zoom, nothing better.
Yeah, well, God, that's the first time it's been brought up ever, I think, since I did that interview. I don't even know when I did that interview, but yeah, you know, I was, besides of being a cut man, I was always a trainer. And and you know, I had my own school of kickboxing before I moved to Las Vegas, and I've been here like 26 years already.
Yeah.
But I didn't come to be a trainer because I thought all the great trainers in the world were here in Las Vegas, which is the boxing capital of the world. But as I got here, as I hung out in the gyms, I saw these guys do pads. I saw them wrap hands, and you know, I saw them do that. I said, "Shit, I could do that." You know, but you know, they would call me to do pads for guys. I did pads for Francois Botha when he fought Mike Tyson. Johnny Tapia, just, you know, but I had a job. I had an 8 to 5 job, so I couldn't commit 100%. But Panama Lewis, the legendary Panama Lewis that passed away now, the controversial Panama Lewis, I should say, was going to work with Mike. So he gave me a call because I used to pad out his fighters. And I was, you know, Mike used to train the same gym as we did. And I just thought to myself, if I could just do one day of pads with Mike, it would fulfill one of my dreams, you know. Well, they called me. Yeah, exactly. So I ended up doing like 2 weeks worth of work with him. And, you know, there was this one guy that hung around the gyms that was a photographer, and he took a picture and comes back and gives me like an 8 by, well, he had like an 8 by 10, and he wanted to charge me $50 for it. And I was insulted. You know, I said, you know,
yeah,
what
I would too, yeah.
Yeah, you know, if he would have said 20, 25, you know, that was, you know, so I turned him down. But the long version is Mike knows and I know that we broke sweat together, and I've done pads for heavyweights, you know, so it was not like anything that was out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
It's just that you know, getting our rhythm together. But that was, yeah, and we've been friends ever since.
How early on in your career was that? Because I say now, obviously Mike Tyson's an all-time great. I mean, anyone who knows sport, not even that knows sport, but anyone knows Mike Tyson. But if you look through some of the names of the people that you work through, you're baffled anyway. Was this sort of early on before you'd worked with some of these huge names? Yeah,
this was right before he got his tattoo, actually. So it goes that far back, right? And
so that is special. That is really special.
Yeah, no, it is. I'm telling you, it's very special. And you know, this young kid that I wrapped the hands for, that Floyd Sr. was training yesterday, his father's one of the guys, I can't tell you the, I think Lucy or something like that. The guy says, "We got 5 on it. We got 5 on it." So I wrapped his hands, and I told him the story that I interviewed Mike Tyson one time, and I asked him, and I tell all these young fighters, and I'll tell you also, and you understand it works for everything. But I said, every fighter has that one little thing that nobody has. To be a special fighter, you need to have that one little thing. Yeah. What is that one little thing? And very simply, Mike Tyson says, take the pain. You have to take the pain. And as I broke it down, Charlie, I thought about it and said, he was absolutely right. And I'm telling this young man, because you're going to go through pain in training. You're going to go through pain during the fight. You're going to go through pain during your family life. You're going to go through pain during your financial life. So it's a hard game. You got to have a passion for it. And I thought that was such a true statement.
That's funny you say that, actually. I mean, it's completely off the cusp of the next part that I was going to. But obviously yesterday we heard the sad news that Marvelous Marvin Hagler had passed. And that's something that I was reading yesterday, that, you know, when he had his camps, you know, straight, focused, he was prepared for the pain, no women, no distractions, everything. And that is what made him so special from the rest. And I think that is something that sets away the elite from the all-time greats, even, that those that really, really, really want it will go all out to make sure that they have it, and they will avoid any form of distraction. They will go through the pain. They'll put themselves through anything, and they will be prepared because they know what the goal is. Yeah, right, exactly. There's only one goal, and as the legendary Hall of Famer Eddie Mustafa Mohamid said, is the ultimate goal of a fighter is to render his opponent unconscious, a knockout. That's the best victory that you could get in our sport. And but it does create damage to the other guy. So it's a hurt business. Yeah. It is. That's why they say that you don't play boxing. I mean, it is something that's... No, you don't. Now, as I was going to ask you, YouTube, boxing, and then I'll go on to exhibition boxing. I imagine it's something that you're going to be sort of quite positive about. I know you've worked with KSI, who's a massive name over here. Yeah. Is the way that you see it sort of, it brings new eyes to the sport, is something that you like? Like, how do you sort of see the whole YouTube boxing kind of thing? Yeah, no, I think it's good for the sport. You know, number one, it gives you different dimensions. Number one, let's look on the business side for DAZN.
you know, the zone is run by subscription only, right? So for them to get people to subscribe, you have to create some type of marketing tool. Well, the marketing tool that they brought up was these YouTubers fighting YouTubers. And the first one, and I worked with Ansel Gibb too when he fought Jake Paul. And I was at the Mike Tyson, Roy Jones fight. I worked with Badu Jack, and looks like I'm going to be working this fight with, well, the event with Jake Paul and Ben Askren. Antonio Tarver's going to fight Frank Mir, and I think I'll be with them.
Regis
but on the
card as well.
Who's that?
Regis Prograis, I believe.
Oh yes, Regis also, yes. So so I think it's a good idea, and I know a lot of the boxing people get mad because these guys get paid some pretty good money, and with KSI, I didn't know who he was, you know, and when he came into the gym, and just like when I did filming with Michael B. Jordan, you know, I spent every day with him wrapping his hands one-on-one, and I told KSI, I said, look, man, I really don't know your history, but here in the gym, you're a fighter, so I'm going to treat you like you're a fighter. And every day I would wrap his hands, and I would kind of counsel him on the mental aspects, the physical aspects, and just kind of, you know, give him my knowledge of what to expect when you get into a fight. But yeah, they do get paid good money. I know when we flew to Las Vegas, from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, there were 7 of us. We went in a private jet, and then we stay in a hotel in Beverly Hills, and I check into my room and I look at my pillowcases and they have my initials embroidered on them. So I knew it was a different level of combat sport, right? Yeah. And, but I tell you, my Instagram fans just kind of popped up. You know, I have, in fact, I just messaged a kid from Cape Town, South Africa, you know, that was a big fan because he watched these type of fights. And same thing with Ansel Gibb, you know, he did a good job. Wasn't definitely an athlete by any means, but when it came to heart and soul and making a transition from what he does to what we do, you have to respect these guys in a win or lose situation. So yeah, I'm for it. I think it's fun. The fans enjoy it. You know, I know some of the fighters and commentators are, you know, they're not very happy about the process, but you know, you have to make your adjustments as you go, and everything is based on social media.
When it comes to fighters like Jake Paul, and I know you're on the card with him coming up, so if you want me to leave it out or whatever, you know.
No.
But when it comes to him making comments like that he would fight Canelo, and you know, these sort of things, do you think there's a line that you don't cross?
Yeah, that's a little over exaggeration. You know, it's to, you know, understand where you're at in the position that you're at. And, you know, number one, I knew he was an athlete because he wrestled before. Yeah. Right. So
he has got wrestling background.
Yeah, he has a wrestling background, so he understands the heart and soul and the pain of getting to where you're getting at. But experience, you can't teach experience, man. That you have to earn. So yeah, that was you know, and I understand, you know, that's his platform is to sell. But one thing I did, and I normally don't comment, but I did day before yesterday, is Dana White had said that I'll bet $1 million that Ben Askren knocks out Jake Paul. And Jake Paul says, well, let's make it 2 million. Let's put it in an equity fund, 2 million each. Whoever wins gets that $4 million. So I responded, being that, you know, relationship I had with the UFC and all that, is, man, I'll be more than glad to be in Jake's corner against Dana White. You know, so yeah. It's all marketing 101, bro. That's all it is.
In terms of Jake Paul against Ben Askren, I was watching a video the other night with Viddal, actually. It came up on my recommended. And it was sort of clips of Ben Askren inside camp. I'm not sure if you've seen it. No. I think it looks a little bit worrying for him. And I know on the outside, everyone who hasn't followed it too closely, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of it all, but I keep an eye on it, obviously, because when I'm doing these sort of interviews, I need to know what's going on. And I mean, I grew up watching people like KSI and stuff like that. So, of course, it intrigues me a little bit. A lot of people on the outside would think that Ben Askren would be a clear favourite in that fight based off the fact that he's got the background in combat sports. Sparring footage looks a little bit worrying, to say the least. More wrestling with big gloves on. What can you sort of say on that? I mean, obviously we know Ben Askren's not known for his stand-up game. Does he have any chance going in there with Jake Paul?
You know, once again, just like anybody that gets into MMA, you know, the boxing guy, oh, I'll knock out. I used to hear this all the time. Boxers used to say, I'll knock this guy out. Well, you're going into territory that's uncharted for you. And Ben Askren has been in combat sports, and where he's had stand-up and ground game and all that. But this is 100% stand-up from the waist up. So everything completely changes, and you have to be reschooled for that. Jake Paul, on the other hand, is being trained by BJ Penn. And I've worked with BJ Penn. He was a super cruiserweight fighter, and he's a good coach. So, you know, I think Jake has adapted more to the boxing skills than Ben Askren will in such a short time. And, you know, and you could say he's going to Freddie Roach's gym. That's okay, but you're not Freddie Roach. You know, you're Ben Askren, you know, and you know, the thing Charlie is always saying in boxing and combat sports, the only thing that counts is the truth, you know, because if you try to bullshit somebody and you know, get them hyped up, you got to be truthful with them.
That's exactly what VIDDAL said, actually. I think it was quite near the start of the video, and he was like, whenever I train a fighter or whenever I'm fighting myself, the camp is truth. If you're not doing well enough, you're told that you're not doing well enough. And he said that a big worry that he had was that the people unless it was a video that they've put out, try to become a laughing stock, say, and then go in there and just give Jake the fright of his life. But obviously that's not really what we're expecting. That you can't have people surrounding you saying that this is good enough kind of thing. And
right. Oh God, you see it all the time. Mike Tyson was like that. Yeah, Mike Tyson was like that when he used to train. I said we trained at the same gym. Literally, he had a caravan of 4 or 5 cars following into the gym, and one guy would take in his luggage, another guy would unpack his clothes, another guy would tie his shoes, and they were all groupies, right? But speaking of VIDDAL Riley, I made a comment yesterday, I think with Boxing Social yesterday, and they asked me about VIDDAL, what I thought of his skill level. And I said personally, and I told VIDDAL this, that he reminds me of a young, and I'm saying young, Muhammad Ali, just by the way he moves around and all that. So, and his desire to do what he does. As a coach, when he coached KSI and Ansel, I told him as a young man, he had the skill level of a veteran trainer. So he knows and understands the makeup of combat sports. So, yeah, such a good kid, man.
See, that's something I'm interested in with VIDDAL, because a lot of people don't really know, because they only see the KSI side of thing, that this man has actually got a lot of amateur background himself. For example, Chris Billum-Smith, one of the top UK domestic cruiserweights, fought him multiple times in the amateurs, and I've spoken to Chris myself about VIDDAL, and people don't realise how good he actually is. Is it a bit of a worry with how young he is, being sidetracked by the whole training thing? Obviously, I think he did a video maybe 2 years ago where he said, you know, I've got to focus on my own career. I've got to focus on my own career. And, you know, he gets on well with KSI and that whole team and everything. But is there a point where he has to go, right, I know, you know, people say that VIDDAL is destined to do very, very well in the sport, whether that's, you know, world level, European honours, domestic honours. Is it a sort of matter of time before he has to sort of focus on his own career before it gets late, maybe?
I think he's doing that now. You know, I from what I heard that, you know, he's stopped training right now for the meantime and focus on his career. Yeah, of course. And, you know, I worked his fights when he was here in the States, and I didn't even charge him, you know, because I wanted him to understand, like I told him on the first fight, I want you to understand the importance of you having a good corner. You know, a good cut man, a good trainer, a good assistant, and he understands that. You know, so these are part of his value that he has to learn as he goes. And if we could teach him how to get there, it makes life a lot easier.
Of course. And then on the other side, it's not the same as YouTube boxing, obviously, because these people are greats of the sport. But the whole exhibition thing, you said you worked in the Mike Tyson, Roy Jones fight. We're looking like we're going to see Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield. What's your sort of opinion on this exhibition thing?
Yeah, well, that's kind of like the movie Grudge Match. You know, it's a little bit different because now with these YouTubers, you got young athletes that are training in our sport to come and do what we do.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Mike Tysons, the Roy Jones, the Holyfields, you know, the Tarvers and the Frank. These are veterans that people just want to see. It's more nostalgic than anything else because, you know, they're not there to hurt anybody.
No.
And you know, so, you know, do you want to see it? I prefer, in all honesty, I prefer seeing these YouTubers, you know, than I would seeing these guys, you know, come out there and look like old guys trying to be like they were the young guys. And times, you know, you can beat anything, but you can't beat time.
I suppose in one way, it's good for people who are young like myself, because, I mean, that was an opportunity for me to see Mike Tyson kind of thing. But then again, it also is like, well, that wasn't the Mike Tyson of, you know, 20, 30 years ago, of course. But a question for you that I seen on Twitter the other day, Mike Tyson said that he sort of held himself back a little bit in the Roy Jones fight. And in the Evander Holyfield fight, he wants to... not hurt Holyfield, say, but, you know, prove that he's got pack and that he can, you know, get a knockout kind of thing. Do you sort of believe these comments, or do you think that they are just going in there for a sort of glorified spar almost?
Yeah, that's all it is. You know, it's you know, like I say, the only thing that counts is the truth, and you can't beat Father Time. So yeah, you know, it's nice to talk.
Of course. Now, going on to sort of your career itself, if I'm interviewing a boxer, all I've got to do, open box rec, maybe watch fights, you know, just have a look. But with you, there is so much out there that I would be looking for days almost.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I just sort of wanted, you know, your most sort of difficult nights, your favourite nights, that kind of thing, just from a personal level in reflection. Obviously, you're still going, but so far, what are your sort of proudest moments, the moments that were so, you know, difficult, that kind of thing?
Man, I tell you, we could talk this for hours and hours, and that's why I tell people, you know, when I do interviews, is I'm not bragging or anything like that, but I have more stories than anybody. You know, I've worked with more world champions, and I've done so many big events, and I've been in movies.
That's I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, no, and it blows my mind, you know, because I grew up as a normal kid. You know, I grew up as a farm worker, and, you know, my parents struggled to, you know, to make a living, and we struggled to make a living. And, you know, I joined the military and was stationed in Thailand, and that's how I got my first training. And I always had the desire to continue, and it brought me to this point. But I've had a lot of great memories, and they just continue to happen. You know, and but, you know, let's say the Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder fight. This last one was special, along with, you know, Vladimir Klitschko and Joshua. But there's just so many. But what makes the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder special is that they recognize me for what I do, and that you know, Jorge Capetillo, which is a friend of mine, you know, did a good job and kept Tyson Fury in the game when he got cut. But he's one of the guys that recommended me, and he told Tyson, Stitch has more experience than me. You know, I would recommend you bring him in, which I thought was a very valiant part of him, you know, and in doing so, Tyson Fury had him working as the fourth man in the corner, show you the class. And, like, you know, like I tell guys, it's not about championship fights for me anymore, Charlie. I've done hundreds and hundreds. It's not about championship fights anymore. It's about the people that I work with. And when I walked into the camp 2 weeks before the Deontay Wilder fight, first thing Tyson Fury does, he puts his hand out and welcomes me to the team. You know, and we spoke about his cuts, and I told him what I was going to do. You know, that I don't wait for things to happen. I'll keep ice on you every round, and did this and that. So, you know, the confidence, I letting them know what I'm going to do, and just the psychological aspect, and, you know, letting them know. I said, look, man, my job is for you to walk out as handsome as you walk in. You know, so and then to see, you know, the other guys from the team, what Sugar Hill, I've worked before with Emmanuel Stewart. Andy Lee, I've worked with before, and so we really bonded off as a good team, and they were just fun to work with, and that's the whole thing. Is I've been blessed to work with a lot of people and have a lot of fun times.
What's the greatest fight you've seen from ringside?
Oh man, there's been many. Well, let's talk about Vladimir and Anthony Joshua.
I was going to mention that, yeah.
Because what made that very, very special is I didn't get into town till Thursday night because my daughter had got married in the island of Crete Wednesday, and Thursday I flew to London and checked in. So I didn't see Vladimir. Yeah, I didn't see Vladimir till Friday at the weigh-ins. And we're in the green room, Vitaly and Vladimir, and we're catching up. And you know, they've had a lot of faith and trust in me. And as I do all fighters, I try to take care of them like they're my children, right? So we're talking, and finally we're finishing up, and I put my hand on Vladimir, and I said, you know, Vladimir, don't worry about nothing tomorrow. I'm going to take care of you like you're my son. Because I understand when these guys go after the weigh-ins, they go into the room and they're in deep thought the night before the fight, and the adrenaline is going, and just all kinds of crazy stuff is going. So walking into the arena was awesome. And what was great was the audience. And I think Wembley holds like 90,000 people. But
our fans do it well.
I tell people that the Brits, it's like 150 fans. And what made that special, a couple things made it special. Number one, the fight was great, you know. But as I'm putting the Vaseline on Vladimir right before the announcement by Michael Buffer, he's, you know, 2 feet away from me, and he tells me, he says, you could call me son. And that gave me chills during that moment, bro. The only ones that heard that was him and I. The whole world is watching what we're doing, and he says, you could call me son. But what gave me the chills is that I knew that night before the fight that he was relaxed because I had commented and told him I was going to take care of him like he's my son. But the fight was so loud, it just buzzed and buzzed. And the reason I've always respected the BK fighters, the British fighters, is like the Balboa movie. I did the Balboa movie. I was Antonio Tarver's cutman. And when Rocky finished, the people in the audience were Rocky, Rocky, Rocky. Well, for the fans in Wembley Stadium were also saying, Klitschko, 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 and Joshua, Joshua. They respected that fight that much. That one probably has to fit on top of, you know, of everything I've done through my careers. But MMA, Chuck Liddell, when he fought Vanderlei Silva, that was probably one of my top fights in MMA because these guys are cracking each other. And, you know, I had met Vanderlei Silva in Japan for the Pride Days, and the Brazilians would give me the nickname Carlos Santana. And so we became friends. But a week before, I had saw Vanderlei, and I told him, I said, look, you know, it's my birthday that day. I want to give you good karma and wish you good luck. So I'm working with Chuck Liddell, and it's a brutal fight. Chuck gets cut, and at the end of the fight, I clean him up, and I go to the other corner and I check on Vanderlei, and he's all swollen and kind of looks a little bit like the Elephant Man. I said, Vanderlei, how you feeling? He goes, oh, sheesh, I'm okay, I'm okay. And after all that hard battle, just like Vladimir Klitschko, he says, Steve, happy birthday. I said, man, what an honor, you know. And all that came from one more story when Lyoto Machida fought Rashad Evans for the world title, and Lyoto won the fight. And the people that don't know, he's half Brazilian, half Japanese, but his father's a very, very proud Japanese warrior. And I go in the dressing room and I congratulate Lyoto, and in front of his father, he says, Stitch, in the ring, you are my father. So at that point, that led me realize that that's the way these guys look at me, which to me, it's an honor.
Having that with the fact that all you've got to search up is greatest cutman of all time and your name comes up. Is that, I mean, I ask boxers, I say, oh, look, you've won a world title. Do you ever pinch yourself and look back? But being the greatest of all time, does that ever sink in? Do you ever sit there and think, wow?
Yeah, it's quite humbling. You know, people call me a legend and this and that. And it's a little bit embarrassing, to be honest with you, you know, because I'm still that normal guy. Yeah. You know, I grew up a farm worker, right? So I never forget where I come from. I was born and raised in, you know, I tell people, if you ate it, I picked it for you. I was born and raised in a migrant camp, you know, so I'm that little guy, that little Mexican guy that grew up to where he's at now. But, you know, and if you notice my outfits, if you saw it with Tyson Fury on my collar, I have Planada. Planada is the name of my little town of 1,500 people. And the world doesn't know what it means, but these people do. So I always give back to them. But I'm that same guy. But yeah, you know, it's quite humbling just to be considered to be in that position. And yeah, it's not a bad feeling.
I bet.
My wife just got me.
Yeah.
Oh, my wife.
We'll I've only got sort of one or two more for you now. But,
No.
The UK is in anticipation for Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. I'm turning 18 in a couple of months myself. I don't know how I'm working in the game so young, but for me, Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury is as big as it gets. For the UK,
Yeah.
it is as big as it gets. This is, for us, really, it's the biggest British fight of all time. How excited are you for it? We're hoping summertime. And I know you work with Tyson, so you know there's only so much you can say. But in your head, how does that fight play out almost?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I just kind of split between two, right? Because Vladimir Klitschko, who
I was going to,
yeah, you know, him and Joshua are good friends, right? And here I am working with Tyson Fury, but I think, you know, Vladimir understands that, you know, this is my job and my job is to take care of fighters, right? But as I break it down, you know, just like when Tyson Fury fought Vladimir, I thought skill-wise, Vladimir was far, far superior, you know, but then he beat Vladimir. But then when I saw Tyson Fury fight Deontay Wilder, I understood why he beat him, because his style of fighting is so unorthodox that it can't be taught on how to fight somebody with that type of style. And that's exactly what he did to Deontay Wilder. So going fast forward into this one, I expect I think Robert McCracken, which I've worked with before when he was here in Vegas years and years ago, he's going to have to teach Anthony Joshua how to fight an unorthodox Tyson Fury. And the thing I liked about Tyson Fury is that he's just so relaxed and he's having a fun time, you know, and I think that kind of helps him more than harms him. So it's going to be a tough fight. I'm looking forward to it.
I find that crazy because you imagine the size of all of these fights, and Tyson genuinely does look such a character that just doesn't get nervous and just lives for it.
Yeah.
When we see Tyson get interviewed, for example, like there was one recently, and we all know what Tyson's like. Sometimes he wants to be interviewed. Sometimes he gives a lot back. Sometimes he's a bit more in his shell, and you don't really know what Tyson you're going to get. Is that sort of more media, or is he like that in the gym as well?
You know, I think maybe so. You know, and these guys, they get a lot more interviews than me. So there's, you know, depends on what time and this and that. But, you know, one thing I got to say about Tyson Fury, and I've mentioned this before, is that I came in the last 2 weeks, so he was starting to peak already. So I got to see the best of Tyson Fury. But the thing that I respected a lot about him was his coolness, but even more so is every round for the whole 3 minutes, whether he was jumping rope or he was shadow boxing, you know, he was talking to us, he was kind of cracking jokes and this and that, but he worked every second of every round. And that was a discipline that I thought was very astonishing on his part. So, you know, you could joke around, and I always tell guys, you know, when you're working out, the more relaxed you are, the less you'll get tired, the more fun you're going to have. And Tyson Fury has that mentality.
Perfect. In terms of everything I've prepared for, there's nothing else I've got to ask. I feel like I could sit here and talk with you for hours, but I want to let you go to dinner. But I just want to thank you for your time. Honestly, and I mean this genuinely, as a big boxing fan and as someone who works in the game, I appreciate this so much. You know, I have just sat here and been fascinated, and I can't wait to watch it back almost. And I hope this is something that we can do again in the future.
Yeah, of course. No, it's something I enjoy doing, you know, and I respect guys in the media because I used to co-host a radio show. So I understand the communications of people getting back to you and being on time and all that. So I understand that. But yeah, you know, this is just the beginning. Give me a call. I got a whole bunch of stories and be glad to share them.